Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I'm talking to Stephen Sherlock. I won't go too much into it now, I'll let him tell his story, but just a trigger warning. If anyone's experienced any family abuse, be careful with this one. If you like this podcast or the previous ones, please consider buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Frankie'sPod. It just goes to help fund the software and the hosting. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Tonight I'm talking to Arthur Locke. You're right, Arthur, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Arthur Locke is actually my Facebook name because of my job.
Right.
So suspects don't find me. So my real name is Stephen Sherlock.
Right. Could have told
Just
us
to
that
let you know.
beforehand.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I should have
No,
told you. Yeah.
that's a good start, isn't it? Right, so if you just want to go through the normal questions that I ask everyone. So where did you grow up? Why did you join the army? What was serving like? And why did you leave? And what have you been doing since?
So, in all honesty, I actually didn't want to join the army. It was I didn't have a choice. It was
Right.
so I was raised in an area in North Lincolnshire, Epworth, a little remote village, kind of on the border between South Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Raised there, I had a very dysfunctional family. I had a father who was very distant, very nasty man. He used to break my fingers if he ever thought I was lying. That's why they're all crooked. So
Get
if he
out.
ever thought I was lying and I was late from home, he used to break a finger. And he used to ask me all the time. I'll never forget one time. I was with my friends Andrew, my cousin, and Richard. We was all at a place called the Furlough. So if anyone knows Epworth, there's a field called the Furlough. And I was playing football with him. I was in goal. Came back late, and my father decided to ask me why you're late home. Just normal. Just came home and he grabbed my little finger and he snapped that one first. And I kept telling him the truth, and he just kept. That's just basically saying how much of a nasty man he is. So he buggered off. My mother resented me because I looked like my dad, even though I was nothing like him. So she kicked me out. So I was homeless at the age of 14.
Fucking hell.
Luckily, a fan. Yeah, yeah, no. I'm trying to cut it down as well because there's a lot more to it. Luckily, a family took me in, but they couldn't afford to put me through college. They just took me in so I had a shelter and I could go to school. So I had school dinners as well. But obviously, like school trips, the teachers actually felt that sorry for me. They used to find me clothes from that were left behind at the school because I never had any new clothes or anything. Sports, PE, nothing. Very skinny kid, very skinny kid. Because I never ate. But yeah, so I I tried to go to college. I tried to go to a college called North Lindsay College to do art and design because naturally I was very, very good at art without trying. I know that sounds big headed, but I was just able to sit down and
No,
draw.
no, not at
And
all. Not at all. My
if you tell
grandkids
me
are
to
exactly
do
the same.
something, yeah, this is it. So no one ever taught me to draw. I was just able to do it, but I couldn't afford college.
Yeah.
I had no life. So I got myself a job fitting tyres at a place called D&D Tyres in Bentley outside of Doncaster. My mother finally let me stay at home because it was going well for her. She became a landlady of a pub, but under one condition I could stay there. All my wages had to go to her. So I was working every day, every weekend. Yeah, no. And it was
Fucking
witnessed by
hell.
a customer behind the bar. I actually walked in one day, I worked overtime, and I came back in on a Sunday and she didn't say hello. She didn't say, "Are you all right?" She just put her hand out to grab the money right in front of a few customers in the old school inn. And their faces said it all. They were shocked. It wasn't, "Are you all right, Stephen? How's your day been? How's work?" It was, she just put her hand out and expected 120 quid a week from me. So that's when I was 15. But
Jesus.
yeah, yeah, I know. Again, this is the narrowed down version. I've actually been on Sheffield Radio about my life, and I had the whole room in tears when I told him the full story. But
Like
yeah,
you
so
can
in the
talk as
end,
much about it if you want. You can talk if you want to expand
uh,
on it. Entirely up to you.
oh yeah, well, it basically, my dad, like I said, I don't speak to him at all, but he used to bring back prostitutes. He used to beat up my mum horrifically. I witnessed it all, but again, in my mind, I didn't want to become him at all. And there was one particular time, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a few scars in my head. There's one
Yeah.
just at the top. There's one underneath my eye. Um, There's a part where I can't grow my beard anymore because he smashed plates on my head when I was trying to defend her. Because he was beating her up, so I ran in the way. This was at 12, and he started smashing plates over my head. It dragged me out by my throat until I was unconscious, put my head down toilet. So yeah, very nasty man. And he used to bring back prostitutes as well. And if my mum wouldn't do what he said, and this is why we were all in the room, my other brother and my other sister, he just beat her up and just basically do what he wanted. Very nasty man, very nasty man.
Yeah, sounds it.
So,
I hope he's in fucking jail.
No, he's not. He ran away to Australia. No, sorry, New Zealand. He ran away to New Zealand with another woman who didn't want kids, who was a teacher, ironically. She was a primary school teacher, and yeah, she hated kids. So they buggered off to New Zealand, and the last thing I heard was she got cancer and he cheated on her. So,
Well,
you know, Lee Evans couldn't even make this up. It's mad.
Freaking hell. I mean, obviously we've never met each other before, but what an introduction! Fucking hell.
Oh, I know. This is it. This is why I said to you the other day. My story's pretty sad. So
no, honestly some of the podcasts I've done. Sorry to interrupt, but some of the podcasts I've done, I've been quite shocked at the stories of people. I've had quite a charmed life, really. And listening to some of what people have got to tell me, sometimes I feel like a therapist. You know what I mean? It's quite shocking.
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
go on.
I actually go into colleges and schools, and in the job I do now, I actually speak to kids about my life and say, look, you can't use what's happened to you as an excuse because I'm on this side of the wire. It's your choice. You can't say this, oh, you don't know what it's like. I do. Trust me, I do. Yeah. I've been through a horrible life. And even when I joined the army, it didn't get much better. My section commander hated me. Just because of the way I looked. So when I went to Catterick, I stayed in Vimmy's barracks because Helly's barracks, at the time that had the Gurkhas and Paras in, was being rebuilt. So our accommodation was being rebuilt. So I was in Udna platoon. I joined 2005. And so we were moved into Vimy barracks up near Ian McKay Gym. So those who are in Catterick would know this. And obviously, our platoons were named after battle honours. So if Bob ran down the corridor, so Iraq, Falklands, Brunaville, Udna, Breville, everything like that. And I got all the way to the end of training. However, during my 8 assessments of P Company on the 10 miler, both my tibias just gave in. So both my shins shattered. So again, I didn't really want to be in the army, but I joined because I had nowhere to go. So I fought tooth and nail at the Doncaster Careers Office to get in. Obviously, they said you're not going to be able to walk properly again. Both your tibias are pretty much shattered. They're not stress fractures. They were shattered. So I had to spend a year in Falklands platoon in rehabilitation, learning to walk up and down the swimming pool. It's the really old swimming pool in Catterick before they built the leisure centre. So I had these 2 big loads of metals, rigs all over my legs, pins, everything, and big Robocop cast for a bit. And when I was able to walk again, and they says, look, we're going to test you on a 1.5 miles. I did it. I passed, got 8:30, got back squadded into Arnhem platoon to redo P Company, just scraped to the end. And I'm being honest, I scraped to the end. However, because my legs won't get any better, they said you're going to have to either medical discharge or transfer to a lighter role. That's when I went to the Royal Dragoon Guards. So I didn't have to redo phase 1, technically phase 2, because it was all amalgamated together at Catterick. And obviously with P Company being right at the end, they sent me straight to Bovington to do my level 2, so to be a tank gunner for a Challenger Mark II. Past that, met my squadron out in Iraq in Op Herrick 10/11 because it went into the second tour. They stayed out. They were the first regiment to get pulled out of Iraq, 4th Battalion Royal Dragoon Guards. So I did my first tour out there, just under 5 months. Came back, did some training. I actually became a PTI in Senelager. So that actually encouraged me about my fitness and everything. And I actually found a really good life in the army. So despite the fact I didn't originally want to be in there, and the fact that I was 8 stone wet through, and I was tiny, the corporal didn't want me there. He says, "You don't look like you should be here. You don't belong here." But I proved him wrong. So got my Lance Jack, got my PTI cross swords in Senelager. We moved back to Catterick, so just up the road from where I did all my training, into Munster Barracks with the, quote me if I'm wrong, probably somebody who's listening will know, there was a Guards regiment there. It was living in the accommodations across from us. It was near the running track, right at the back of Catterick. We had the medical corps in there as well. I spent a couple of years there, went to Afghanistan, Op Herrick 12. We lost 4 lads, unfortunately. I was a Barma commander. So, as you're aware, obviously looking for IEDs and everything.
Yeah.
Did my 6 months tour there. When I got back, they found I had lost a lot of my hearing from a lot of the explosions from IEDs and obviously from firefights and everything. So again, they tried to put me in the QM department or MT department, and I said no. I was 24 years at the time. I was a PTI, so I requested to go PT Corps. They wouldn't let me. Basically, everyone said, "We want to keep you in the regiment. We want to keep you here. We'll let you renew your PTI, but we want to keep you here." I said, "That's fine, but I'm not a gym staff first, and I can't go on the ranges anymore. I can't go out on tours with you anymore. I'm not allowed," which irritated me a lot. It really did. And that's the reason why I left, because that, yeah, because I found a passion, and I actually found something I really enjoyed, and it was fitness, and I never thought I did. So I left, and all the money I saved from Afghanistan, I wasn't interested in buying a sporting car or anything. I just kept to myself. I looked after my other brother and sister who had a different dad, and he left as well. So all my wages every month went to my mother. As much as I didn't get on with her, I didn't want to see my other brother and sister suffer. And people at the regiment will back this at Roger Guards, because there was one particular time I just left. I went AWOL for 2 weeks, and my mother went for a surgery, and she couldn't get my little brother and sister to school. So I just packed my things, because I spoke to the welfare officers, I spoke to the RSM, everyone, and says, "Look, I need emergency leave. I need to go home, look after my brother and sister while my mother's had surgery, and take them to school, provide for them." They said no, just straight up, no. We can speak to them on the phone, but that's as far as we'll help them. So I went back to my room, and one of the lads saw me and said, "Inchy," my nickname was Inch-Eye Private Eye, because I'm not the tallest bloke, and because of my second name, Sherlock. They nicknamed me Inch-Eye Private Eye. He says, "Inchy, you all right?" And I said, "Look, I'm going to go home. I'll be back when it's sorted." I got a phone call off Scott Morton, who was my core bloke from Paris as well. He recognised me from P Company. He rang me up and said, "Look, we're going to send a lad down to come and pick you up before the RMP's done." I says, "No, I'm telling you now, I've not run away. I'm just sorting this out. Once my mother's sorted, I will come back and I'll accept my punishment." 2 weeks went by. I went back to the regiment. I got all my kit on, bulled my boots, stood outside the RSM's office at 5 a.m. and waited there until he got there. He actually walked up to me and says, "It's Sherlock, isn't it?" And I went, "Yes." He says, "Carry on your duties, okay? I've already spoke to your old platoon commander. We know you haven't done it for selfish reasons. Just go and carry on with your duties." So I did. They pulled me in. I had the adjutant, 2IC, my old platoon commander, troop commander, because I'm mixing up from the infantry. Troop commander, because it's RDG. Major Lane, they all represented me and says, "We know Sherlock, he's dedicated. We know he didn't do it for selfish reasons, and the fact that he's come back and said, I'm here to face the music. I'm here to accept a punishment to protect my family." So luckily nothing came of it. They just fined me £100, which was really good of them. But I ended up leaving anyway, like I said, mainly because I didn't want to be desk-bound. So I left the army. All the money I saved up, I invested into a gym in Epworth called Sherlock's Gym, investigating your fitness needs. So I set it up in a hangar. It cost me 27 grand to get all the gym kit,
Wow.
set up the rent, first deposit, everything. Now, I was doing all right. I was going to college. I had to redo my education at North Lindsey College because none of my qualifications from the army transferred over at this time. It was 2012, so my PTI course was not recognised, so I had to redo my level 3, everything at college. And I received a phone call one night from my little brother Scott saying, he was in tears. He was absolutely in hysterics, and I could hear some blokes in the background saying, "Look, we're here to enforce the fact that your mother's not paid any money." And she owes, obviously, the council. She's not been to court or anything. And I says, "What's going on, Scott?" He says, there's these guys here, and they're trying to get into the house. They're trying to take our mum's property. He was in hysterics. My other younger brother and sister, who was 7 at the time, they were crying hysterically as well. So I said, "Put me on the phone to one of them." So my brother Scott put me on the phone to one of them. Says, "All right, this is Steve. What's going on?" Says, "Oh, my name's Tony. I'm here representing the council." I says, "Right, what's going on?" "Your mum has tax evaded. She's refused to attend court, and she was fiddling the books when she was a landlady at the old school inn." I was like, "Right, Christ. Well, I'm in a good financial position. If you want, I will." Despite what my mum's done to me and made me homeless, and still won't let me stay at home and everything when I left the army, and all the money I sent her throughout the years, and when I added it up, it was nearly 80 grand. Never asked her for a penny back. I just wanted to see my brother and sister, well, my brothers and my sister, my younger sister, to not have the life I did. So I always sent Christmas presents home, even when I was out in Iraq. I used to quickly run, and I remember trying to log in on the computer, and it used to take 20 minutes to dial up, quickly get on Amazon and send stuff home. So they always had Christmas presents because my mum never bought them out. And this is all true. My family, her sisters, her own sisters, will tell you this. My aunties and that, they know what she was like, and witnesses know what she was like, and how dysfunctional my family was. And they said, "Sorry, it's gone past that point, and it's quite a serious offence what she's done. She's fiddled taxes. She owes us a lot of money." I was like, "Right, how much does she owe?" And again, I was thinking of my brothers and my little sister, not really her, because I know what she's like. And they says, "Look, she owes like 20 grand. So I'm sat there in my gym sorting it out. A gym I had just set up, started to build up customers, and this was during recession as well.
Yeah.
I rang a load of people up, customers, everyone, and says, "Look, I've got all this commercial kit. It needs to go. Come in with cash. Just come in and get it and just pay it off," because I had some savings. So I did, and I was sat in my gym, a grown man, and it's probably the time when I was at my biggest because I was getting ready to compete in bodybuilding as well, crying my eyes out because it was all the hard work and a life I just wanted, despite everything. And I thought, why again am I being kicked in the teeth when I've served my country? I've never been like my dad, who was a horrible, horrible man. I've tried to be the nicest I can to people. Why am I suffering for my family again? So people were wheeling my kit out, all brand new Body Flex commercial kit I just ordered from Leeds at the fitness superstore. All my hard-earned money, because obviously I didn't spend it on a supercar or anything. I just spent it on a business because I was trying to be a responsible adult and I want to be a dad. Basically, my dad never was. I wanted to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And I always had it in my head. So my gym went. I paid off her debt completely. And how did she repay me? She doesn't say thank you. She's still not said thank you to this day at all. Okay. You know, and this is in front of my wife as well. She's not once thanked us. Paid off her debt, and I ended up living on the streets for 2 years in my army sleeping bag in Central Park in Scunthorpe. And this was found out by the college. Because because they noticed I was dramatically. I was still going to college. I was cleaning myself in the toilets because we had a free gym and the showers. Obviously, keeping up with my education. I was staying in the library as long as possible at North Lindsay College to stay warm whilst I was homeless and doing my education for 2 years. So she didn't let me stay at the house. She didn't let me stay in a room. She didn't pay me a penny back. I ended up sleeping in a sleeping bag. I had no other family members nearby to turn to or anyone to support me. So I was sleeping in my sleeping bag. I eventually got little part-time jobs cleaning toilets and cleaning at bars whilst I was at North Lindsay College, doing my level 3 personal training. And it was only until I was doing a triathlon, I passed out. I just went face first into the gravel whilst running. And one of the tutors, Trevor, said, "What is going on, Steve? You have lost a stupid amount of weight." I just burst out into tears. I didn't know what to say. And they says, "We know you're not working because we went to obviously get a reference from the leisure centre you were claiming to be working at." Because I was lying to the college and saying, "I'm tired because I'm working as well." And they said, "You don't work here." And I just told them everything. I says, "I'm homeless. I've been sleeping in my sleeping bag." And I says, "We know because we found your Bergen at the back of the college as well. So we know your struggles and everything." They were very kind. They tried massive to help me. They got me through the course whilst I was homeless, but there was nothing really they could do, like support-wise. The job centre didn't want to touch me because I didn't have an address or anything. I remember going to Scunthorpe Job Centre and they says, "Well, you don't have a fixed abode. We can't help you." They didn't believe as well I wasn't drinking and I wasn't taking drugs. They just assumed that I was because of how I looked. Despite the fact I was as healthy as possible and I was still keeping on top of it. So once I finished my course, I commuted to Doncaster. I started walking to Doncaster to find a job because there was nothing in Scunthorpe. And I found one, personal training job at Exercise for Less. It had just opened. And ever since then, really, I've still been paying off the debt because I had to take out credit cards and everything, and I'm still paying them off to this day for what my mum did to me. But luckily, I'm thankful because even though it's been like it's been 12 years now since I've been to Afghanistan. I'm just about to finish paying off my debts for paying off my mum because I had to get out credit cards and everything to obviously get by and get sorted because the jobs I were getting wasn't really well paid. But it has worked out eventually. I mean, I have nothing to do with her. I have nothing to do with my dad. I've got my son, obviously, with me. My wife, who's been incredibly supportive. I met her while I was at the gym as well when I started getting back on my feet. I'm in the police now, in another uniform service that accepts the fact that I'm very much into my fitness and everything as well. But it's been a really, really hard road. When I couldn't get a joint account, I couldn't get any finance, I couldn't get anything because I also found out when I paid off my mother's debt, because I changed my name to her surname because I had nothing to do with my dad. I got blacklisted because of the offence she did.
Yeah.
And because it came under a Sherlock account, my bank account, I was blacklisted along with her. And I had to fight tooth and nail with the banks, with TSB, because there was a red flag next to my name saying you can't get finance, you can't get a joint account, you can't get a mortgage, you can't get anything. And it turns out, basically the courts just went, "Well, what's this account that's paid for it? It says Sherlock on it." They thought it was my mother's. So they just blacklisted that account and assumed I was a part of the debt and I was getting dragged into it. So I suffered for another 10 years, not being able to get a mortgage, not being able to get finance, not being able to get rent, anything at all. And I had to eventually prove that I was innocent. And the banks have only just cleared me now and said, "Yeah, the red flag's gone. We can see your credit rating was really good." But we couldn't do it because the courts put a red we couldn't do anything because the courts put a red flag on your name and they put it on hers and everything. So I suffered massively. But the most upsetting part is I didn't know my granddad, who quite recently, one of her sisters knows how much of a notorious liar my mother is and how much I suffered because of her and everything after the army and before the army. Um, she were playing me off my granddad. So when she got all this money off me and I sacrificed my business and I've suffered for 12 years onwards, uh, trying to pay off everything and make everything back to normal, she were also getting money off my granddad when my grandma wasn't ill. And she was saying, Stephen's not giving me anything. He hates you, by the way. He doesn't want anything to do with his family. And she was saying the same to me. She was telling me my own granddad hated me and my grandmother because I was like Robert, my dad, even though I was nothing like him. And when he passed away, I felt horrible because I got a phone call saying, "Do you want to attend the funeral?" I said no, because I had nothing to do with him. From what I heard, I hated him. And my Auntie Jane says, "No, actually, I think you need to see this." I came to the house and he had a shrine of me because I was one of the grandchildren he were very proud of. So he had a picture of me in basic training with my maroon berry and my green backing, with two others, her husband, who's been to university, and another grandchild. I just cried because I didn't know. And then I found out, that she had been taking money off him while he was ill and dying of cancer and taking money off me. And she turned us both against each other. And I found out my granddad was so very proud of me, and I never knew. And he actually had a picture in a shrine area dedicated to me saying, greatest achievement.
I don't know what to say. I mean,
because I was one of the
there's words
family
I could
members
say,
that
but I wouldn't
actually
want
made
to.
some of myself. But
Fucking hell. I said I don't know what to say because there's choice words I could say, but they're not polite. You know what I mean? It's
you
like,
know what? You can
I
say
can't
what you like,
understand.
honestly, because
What a cunt.
um,
It's just-
no,
I
no,
just, I
this
just
is
don't
it.
understand how people can be like that to their own family. It
I
beggars
can't,
belief. I just don't know. It's something
I
wrong.
can't
You know what
because
I mean? It's obviously.
oh yeah, I 100% agree because ever since I've had my son, I can't describe it, and I've said that to
No,
people
no.
at work. I said it's a love you cannot describe. It's unconditional love,
Yeah.
and it made me realize even more how evil my parents were as well. And to try and find any excuse on everything.
I mean, do you know if there
So
was? I mean, obviously, with your, saying about your grandfather, obviously, it sounds as though there was no abuse to your mother from that side, and it all stems from
no,
your father. No, so I mean, did you
no.
ever look into your father's side? If there was any, or you're not interested in that?
My father was just as bad as my mother, very manipulative, kept his side of the family away from. So
Right.
I was stuck in the middle. I had a very nasty sister as well who used it as an excuse, which is why I said, because she was never beaten by my dad like I was and given scars or anything all over her body. And neither was my younger brother. It was just me, which was weird. I didn't get why, because I was the only normal kid. So again,
Maybe
this
she
is
felt
all honest.
threatened
A
by
lot of
you.
neighbours. Yeah, I don't know because he is now because I saw him at my grandmother's side, and he came up to me and he says, "Stevie boy, how are you?" And I didn't put my hand out because he tried to shake my hand, and I was stood next to my granddad on his side who was a veteran as well, and I just says, "Robert, stay away from me. All right, don't speak to me." He says, "Oh, I thought I'd just say hi," and I says, "You haven't seen me in 16 years." And the first thing you say to me is, "Stevie boy, I could have had a different life if you was here supporting us. You ran off. I couldn't afford college. I joined the army. It turned out the army I loved, again, which was a nice surprise. And I'd never badmouthed the army, despite Afghanistan and Iraq. I wouldn't want my son to join because obviously it's a different world now, the army. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't want him to go what I went through, and that's why I did it. So my future family, i.e., my son now, wouldn't ever have to go through it. And obviously, to break that cycle, and I'm proud. That's the proudest thing of my life is the fact that I've broke that chain. That he will never go through what I went through, and that cycle's ended through me to him. And
Would you
he'll
say?
he'll never
No, go on. Sorry, go on.
he'll never know my mother and he'll never know my father, as far as he's aware. And if this sounds horrible, I understand in people's eyes, but to me, it makes sense. They're dead. He doesn't need to know them at all. Because,
Totally
like
agree
I
with you.
said, we're still suffering today. I'm still trying to pay off them debts, and that was another thing. I forgot about that. This is another tip of the iceberg. She did get a payout, and she kept promising me in front of my wife and in front of family members, in front of my brothers and sisters, saying, I will pay you back that money. Not all of it, but a lump sum. So in my eyes, I thought, if I get this lump sum, I can pay off these credit cards, all this debt that's been built up because of it. And for years and years, she kept coming up with excuses saying, I've got to see a physiotherapist, I've got to go and see this solicitor. For years. And I noticed my other brothers and sisters got new cars, they got new TVs, they were suddenly going on holiday. And I was like, where's she getting this money from? And then I spoke to her and says, look, because I called her Lynn. I stopped calling her mother, and the same with my dad. I started calling him Robert by his name because they didn't earn the title of mother and father. So, and this was in front of my wife and everyone. What's going on? Where's everyone getting this money? And then my brother, who felt really guilty, told me, he says, Mum got a payout and she spent it all on us. And we know she was meant to give you the money back she owed. And I thought, wow. And she's been lying to me since the payout for 3 years, telling me she never got a payout. She never got any money or anything. And so the fact that, she continued to lie, and she hid it from me still, and she promised to pay me back, and this was in front of everyone. It was only until 3 years later. So my brother and sister are just as bad because they allowed her to lie for 3 years and take the cars, take the TVs, take all the gifts until the money ran dry. And then when the money ran dry, they went, oh, by the way, Steve, I feel bad. Mum got a payout and she just never paid you back. She's been lying for 3 years. And I just
They don't
thought,
sound. They sound a bit self-centered as well, to be honest. But
oh, they are.
yeah, probably
It
been a
put a
lot
lot of
too long.
strain on my marriage because my wife, she bless her, she's so delicate, and despite the fact my family was dysfunctional, she felt so bad for my brother and sister because they were going through what I went through. My mum wasn't buying them new shoes for school. She wasn't buying them dinner. So my own wife, who was working very limited hours at a retail store in Doncaster and not earning a lot of money, was going to their schools, was going with me and buying them school clothes. And she never got thanked either because she had a heart. And as much as she said, I hate your mother, and I agree with her, she felt bad because she has a heart, she has a soul.
Yeah.
And we were arguing all the time because the debt was racking up for me because I couldn't afford to do anything. I couldn't get finance, or I had to get credit cards with massive amounts of interest to get by, to eventually get a car and that. So it's only until now I've managed to whittle these debts down to £1,000. I've just got £1,000 left to pay off, but it's been 14
Which is
years
still,
later, 12
it's
years
still a
later.
fair amount, isn't it? It's still a fair amount. It's not pennies.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I've had to keep transferring it, so now my credit rating's clear, and that red flag's gone. I've had to now transfer it again to a 0% interest because the interest I had before, when I was paying off £98, 24 quid was only covering it. The interest rates were that high.
Yeah.
So I keep doing it as people are aware, and I've never touched the credit card. So 12 years later, I've managed to get it down to £1,000. So we've suffered for years and years and years, and still not been apologised to this day. Still not a penny paid back, and but yeah, that's the life. It's not the army's fault, but
No. So the questions I've got for you are really. Do you think? I know it's going to be a bit of a tweak question, really. Do you think the army's helped your personality for after you got out and you went through these hardships?
definitely,
Did the
definitely,
army make you more robust towards what was happening to you?
yeah, definitely.
Or,
I think if I went through a different life and didn't go in the army, I don't think I'd be here today.
no. Oh, yeah, I kind of
And
get that.
obviously, I'm not saying that half-heartedly because I've seen people commit suicide in my job, and I've seen people want attention in the wrong ways.
Yeah,
It sounds horrible, but let's say repeaters who aren't actually going to do anything. If I went through a different life and I didn't get the skills, the robust, the mentality, the discipline from the army, yeah, I wouldn't be here today. Um, a lot of the training kicked in, which sounds weird, but I think a lot of that was drilled into me in the first 6 weeks of Catrick when they really,
yeah,
really whittled people out. Because I know before we even got our maroon beret and we had our cunt caps, before we even got the maroon beret with the green backing, they proper hammered us. I think we started with 67 people and we got whittled down to 24. And then by the end of the training of the P Company, I think we were down to 12. And then I
wow,
ended up
that's a
getting
big,
back squadded
yeah,
anyway because of my injury. So if it weren't for that, and which is why I'm very proud I was in the army at that time, because it was very old school. Yes, it was
yeah,
2004 to 2005 doing basic training. It was old school. They used to take you out back, slap you about if you were late to parade, and you know what I'm saying. It
yeah,
was, well, slap about was probably the softest way to say it. You got knocked black and blue.
yeah.
You've got absolutely obliterated, and I like that because you saw the people there. It was like we came back off a 10 miler from the ranges in Catterick. Somebody left their footlocker open, and Corporal McGreen came into our section's room, two sections room, smashed it up, absolutely destroyed it, covered everything in toothpaste, shaving foam, broke all our bull boots up, threw them outside. And I mean, not even threw them outside. He ran down the road and launched them everywhere. We spent all night looking. And he came in and went, "You've got 2 hours to be parade ready. Good luck, Joe." And just left the room. And we all looked at each other and said, "Fuck it." We sat in a line and just gave each other a back massage. And he came in and just says, "Yeah, that's what I like to see, Joe." And then walked out. He wanted to see who was going to make and break. And that, yeah, if it weren't for that, if it weren't for P Company and for Paras originally, and then going to Royal Dragoon Guards, yeah, that discipline and everything has helped me get to where I am today. And despite still the debt and paying off for others' mistakes, and still, suffering from it
yeah.
to now, it's helped me massively. The army's massively helped me. And I'd say the same to anyone who's gone through my lifestyle. Join the army. If you don't have a family, it does. It's what you make of it. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
I miss corridor.
I've known guys who like, I don't think they've had as rough a upbringing as you, but they have had some bad times, and it's the army that saved them. And I've known lads who come in and stayed the full term, and progressed quite high through the
Yeah,
army as well. Got the LA and stuff like that, and it's brought them out. It's got them out of that situation they were in beforehand, and give them a whole new
yeah,
life. And I've seen it go the other way as well. It's not
yeah.
all like
No, I
fluffiness and
have. I
roses.
have in the police. I've come across a lot of army lads who have, yeah, gone the other way, and it's real sad to see. It's real
Yeah.
sad to see
I mean, I
because
was going to
they've not
ask
been through a hard life.
if you don't mind me asking about the police. So, what made you join that, and how was that? How was it getting into that?
Because no matter what I did, so the fitness industry doesn't pay great, and it's somewhere I really excelled in, especially after being a PTI. My standards were very high, so every job I walked into, sorry, as a fitness manager, I got it straight away because of my standards, how I were. I drew the line military style. I had that military humour, before everyone now gets offended and
Yeah,
everything. And I didn't mind at all telling people straight at all. You've not done your job. You've not cleaned the gym. Why have you? And I know a lot of people hated me, and the amount of complaints I got in to the general manager about me. But the general manager used to just say, "You're doing your job. You're not unprofessional." But again, it's just the woke generation now. Um, I just didn't feel fulfilled at all.
mm,
There was just something about it. Being in a suit, I didn't like it. I didn't like being sat behind a desk either. It put me off going to the gym because I'm a massive firm believer of fitness. So I joined the prison service after doing a bit of security work. because again, couldn't really at the time join the police because of the red flag next to my name, because they do
Yeah.
finance checks and everything. But the prison service aren't as strict. So I joined the prison service for a bit. And I got criticised for my bald boots, my bald toe caps every day. However, all the lads in prison never once, ever gave me any trouble. The first thing they'd say to me is, Gov, you're ex-military, aren't you? I says, yes. Says, you can tell by the way you walk, the way you talk, you stand up straight, you look fit, and you look like you can fight. What was you in? I says, well, originally paras, but I'll never claim to be a full-time para. I did become a crap at because I had to transfer after P Company, but nobody can ever take the fact I earned my maroon beret and I did P Company twice. So they can't take that away from me. But they never gave me any problem because I was disciplined and I was straightforward and I was honest with them. So this was at Doncaster at Moorlands Prison, and then I went to Hull as well, worked there for a bit. And I went for a job there in, if anyone's listening, they'll know, a tornado team. So it's the riot team that go in and pull people out of cells.
Yeah.
And I got told I couldn't join the tornado team and I couldn't join the nationals team because I was too militarized. So I asked the CM what did he mean by that? And I had this, I know this sounds horrible, but it was the best way I could describe him, is a fat little man who looked like a lesbian. That's the only way I can describe him. And he said to me face to face, you're too militarized. And I says, can you explain to me, what do you mean too militarized? He says, you're intimidating. Well, why am I intimidating? Well, you come in with your boots polished and it's the way you talk and it's the way you act. And I says, it's not intimidating, it's approachable. And every time I've approached somebody who's been kicking off, they back down when I speak to them. I've never had to put hands on because they know I'm not here to mess around, basically, or fuck around. If I have to, I'll put my hands on and I'll drag them back into the cell. And they know this. But also because I gave them respect, they give me respect. And that's how it works. And despite why they're in there, I'm not there to judge them. I'm there to do a job. So I couldn't go on this nationals course and I couldn't go on the tornado course. And that was the only reason. So I obviously got a meeting in with the federation. I got my line manager in, and it went in my favour. And he got a written warning for it because apparently it's not the first time he's done it. He picks and chooses his friends. And the part of the criteria is, do you have an ex-military background? Yes. Are you an ex-instructor? Yes. Because when you're a PTI, you have to learn how to do riot training and you have to teach it. So in Senelager, that was a part of our course. So I was a qualified instructor. And despite ticking all the boxes and being physically fit and one of the only people who could still run to level 13 on the bleep test at the age of 30, he said no. So he says, right, after this meeting, you can go on the course in 5 years.
Oh, thanks very
much. Right, well, I could get injured by then. Yeah, I was like, cheers, I could get injured by then. I could get medically, removed from the prison service. I could get killed. I could just walk a landing and somebody could just do me or whatever. Or I could die outside of work. So I applied for the police, and obviously ever since then, I would recommend it to anyone. I love the police. Even the down days, it reminds me of the military, and you just smile. I've had people threaten to kill me, to take my life. I've had it all. I've had all of it, and I just smile every time. And I think, no matter what you say or what you do, I have been through far worse. So do your worst, mate. And they hate that. They hate that, especially when they find out. Some of them do find out the life I've been through, and they use it as an excuse, like, oh, you don't know what it's like. I'm doing this because my dad used to beat me. How did he used to beat you? Well, he slapped me. He took my phone off me. Oh, wow. Wow, nice. Yeah, my dad used to smash plates on my head and flush my head down the toilet, all because I was just a kid. So, yeah, you've got no excuse, pal. But I love it. I feel very fulfilled. I feel very fulfilled in police, back in uniform. And they massively respect the fact I'm always training at the gym, that I like to keep physically fit because I look approachable and I look like I can do my job. They love the fact I'm always bullying my boots as well because I find it very therapeutic, and just my humour as well.
Yeah.
They like my Scotty humour. I get called weird all the time at work, but they like that because it builds morale in the best way because you don't get
I
it
mean,
anymore. And I've met some SWAT.
I was going to say years back. I mean, it was, the prison service was an out for people leaving the army, and I know lots of lads who have left the military and gone into the
Yeah,
prison service and had a full career there. But the police was also a kind of the same thing as well. I know lots and lots of lads who, over my time, I mean, I joined in 1985, and throughout that
mm,
all that time, I must know 10, 15, probably around
yeah,
about that. And it doesn't sound a lot, but it kind of is. Who left to join the police, and ended up leaving the army, joining the police, doing full careers in the police, playing on a national, crime squads and stuff like that, and other things that they can't talk about, which was a bit of a shock when they did. They've never mentioned it
yeah.
on here. Don't worry. And I've spoken to guys who are in the IUC and stuff like that. Again, ex-military, they've joined the IUC. So, like you just touched upon there, how similar the place is to the army or to the military. How close is it? Is it
It's I won't say it's that close. It's close for the fact of they want people to look presentable in the uniform, and obviously, yeah, the fitness test isn't that hard. It's not. It's a level 5-4. It's a walking pace bleed test. Um, but it's close because of the fact they want people, and you're on the front line every day, and obviously you see police driving around all the time, and it was the same in the army. You get some people, you can look at and think, "Hmm, is it the right job for them? It might not be. It might be. They might change over time. It's it's close because of the uniform, and it's close because you have to be on the ball, doing your job because obviously you've got a lot of paperwork to do, and it has to be very, very precise. You have to be honest. You have to show integrity all the time. Because I've been pulled into court a few times. I obviously can't discuss the job that it was
yeah,
for, but I've been pulled into court and I've had solicitors in my face, calling me a liar, trying to pull apart my evidence, my statements, everything. So it's close for the fact you have to be on it, and especially with life and death situations, dealing with people. There's been a lot of times I've dealt with people, genuinely suicidal people who have been on the edge, literally,
yeah.
and we've had to grab them and pull them back over as well. So it's close in that aspect, but things have changed. Like I've seen the army, I don't live far from a barracks now, and squaddies are different now. It's a different world.
Yeah.
Um, it's sad to say. There's been a few I've dealt with, taken back to camp, who have done things they should have lost the job for. And there was one particular time, one scoffed at me. He had been in the army 2 years in the RLC, um, and he says, "You're ex-army, aren't you?" Because again, people tend to pick up on it while I'm at
Yeah.
work. Wearing my old boots for one, being bald, and again my uniform always being immaculate because it's discipline we bring with us. And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, what tours did you do?" I says, "I did Optelic 10. We went into Optelic 11 because it was transferring over. So we did a couple more months. And then we helped pack up the camp. And we left. We were the first regiment to leave. And then I did Op Herrick 12. Never lied about anything. And like I said, I'll never claim to be a full-time para. There's no point lying about your career because somebody will find you out
Mm.
and everything." And he scoffed at me. And I just looked at him and says, "Well, why are you scoffing?" "Oh, well, you've left the army." "I've done my part, mate. I've done tours and everything. What have you done?" "Oh, well, it's a bit different now." And his attitude, and he says, all these veterans going on about, "Oh, I did this, I did that." And he went, "It's pathetic." And I just looked at him and thought, wow, this is the army now. You
You know,
respect your peers, you respect the people who are ahead of you.
it's
And it's,
it's a weird one. I went to a function just before Christmas, and it was a veterans one. And one of the lasses who was running it used to work on the last camp I was at, and she was still working in there. She was worked for Sodexo or whoever it is now that's doing it, and she'd been there years. And I'd said to her, I said, "Oh, what's it like at camp now?" I went, "How's the bar?" And she was like, "The bar's shut." the sergeant's mess
Yeah.
is shut.
Mess,
Mess.
messes, yeah.
They're all closed. Yeah, and I was like, what? I said, well, where do the lads go for a drink and that? She goes, they don't. They finish work. They go to the room. The majority of them are in single man rooms now. They go in there. They've got internet in the block and
Yeah,
stuff like that. And they come out again the next morning to go to work. They're not gelling with each other.
they're
They're not having that camaraderie that we used to have. I mean, were you in Germany? Sorry, did you say?
Yeah, I was in Munster and I did
Yeah,
my
so I mean,
PTI in Centerlagen. So
yeah,
we had
it's
all the hospital
very.
corners, shared rooms.
I mean, you'd have seen the difference between a UK regiment and the Germany regiment. It was the Germany regiments gelled more because they were stuck with each other every weekend on the piss and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And even in like places where I was at, I've never served in Catterick, thank God. I would never want to serve there. But I mean, we were up at Albemarle for my last 6 years,
yeah,
and that's there. Thursday night, Thirsty Thursdays, the whole lot of them would be together and go out. They'd be suffering the next day on COSPT and stuff like that. But they were gelled together. They were a unit. But now, from what I can gather, they're not. The army's completely different to what it was when I left. I
yeah.
left in 2012.
This
So
is it. You
it's
have
a
a
sound
because
here.
it is, and that's why I'm saying it's not really like the army anymore, and it's the same with the police. It's not like the army, but I would recommend it for people who miss the uniform service, can't get back in the army, or don't want to go back into the army for certain reasons. The police has been brilliant, and it's been brilliant to me, and it really respects the fact, like I said, of they utilise my background, so I can build up a rapport with people, I can talk to people, especially a lot of suspects. And when they realise that I'm not just a uniform, which again, I don't ever take the hate personally because it is a uniform.
Yeah.
It's helped a lot of squaddies like myself, and I love the job, and I will do this now until I retire because I absolutely love the job, even the bad days. But the army's different, and everyone who I speak to who's in the army now, who I served with, have said, "Don't rejoin. I'm just doing it now for the retirement, for the pension." He says, all these kids joining now don't see it as a career. He says, you're lucky if you hold on to anyone more than 4 years now. He says, the turnover in the army is ridiculous. So I spoke to a few lads at the camp near me, and they said, yeah, once I get my driver's license and my HGV, I'm leaving. That is it. That's all you get now.
I mean, we always used to get that. We
It's
always used to get a turnover like that, and people would say the same thing. But I mean,
you don't get anyone now. Yeah, you don't get anyone now who wants to do courses like PTI, who don't want to do anything specialist. Even when they get offered to go abroad to like Cyprus, Spain, Africa, they turn it down. They don't want it. So you don't even get the lads anymore who want to do stuff. They just palm it off because there's nothing they're really doing now. So these men and women don't actually want to do it. And when they get offered it, they're like, nah, I don't really want to do it. Me, I'd jump all over it.
yeah.
If they offered me to go to Africa, I'd jump on it. If they said go to America, to an American camp for 6 months, I was like, right, where my bags are packed. Where am I going? I'd go.
I'll swim.
But you don't get that attitude anymore. And I say this because I've noticed it in the prison service. And I won't talk too much about the police because I'm currently in that job. And again, I don't want to. But it's true. When I was in the prison service, there were people who was in the army, left after 4 years, and you could see the difference in attitude because they were lazy in the prison service. The uniform was disgusting all the time. There was no pride in it. If they could dodge jobs, I know we all dodge jobs in the army. We've all done it. But it was sheer laziness. Sheer laziness in the prison service. And it was everyone else's fault, crying all the time. I had a lot of blokes saying I was in the Navy for 4 years. All right, okay, cool. I hate my life. It's boring. Oh, I hate this job. I can't believe I have to come to work in uniform. Nobody made you join the job.
Why did you apply for the prison service then?
Yeah. Exactly. And straight away, as soon as I said that, I was like thinking, "You're making no sense, mate." Straight away, and this is your attitude. Me, I wanted to be in work. I wanted a life. I wanted, despite everything being thrown at me, and suffering from my family's stupid mistakes, and me being the one who suffered because they've all got a good life now, from what I've seen. My sister's got a very good life, despite how she was a little shit My mother's got it very easy because she was just sitting at home. She's working for the NHS now, from what I've gathered, and all the other siblings were paying for her. So, but yet there was me carrying all this debt for paying off her debt.
Yeah, fuck you know.
So
You've not had it easy, like, have
I
you?
know. No,
Going
this
back
is it.
to
But
the
like I
prison
said,
service, just going back to the prison service then for a minute. Look, I heard a thing last night. I was listening to a podcast from the East Durham's Veterans Association, and they were saying that it's at the moment it's like an all-time high of ex-military who are actually in prison. It's 1.3% of the prison
yeah,
population at the moment is, or 1.36% of the overall population of inmates is actually ex-forces now. Did you notice a lot
yeah,
of that, and could you tell that somebody, did they act differently?
yeah,
Did they?
because when I was at Morelands prison, I dealt this thing called veterans in custody. So we had
Yeah,
a guy called Tom. He served in the RAF for 16 years, and he did the veterans in custody, and he trained me up to take over. And I noticed a massive increase. So when you had the segregation block, which was your very, very naughty boy block, and they got all the privileges taken away from him for really nasty things that they've done, or bringing in drugs. There was a massive turnover of military coming in, and every time I spoke to him, and says, "Why are you in here, mate?" Because I remember one lad in particular. He was a para, and when I went into his cell, I says, "You all right, bud?" And he came to attention. He stood to attention in front of me, and I says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Stand at ease, pal. You're not in the army anymore." I says, "Sit down, sit down." And he sat down. I says, "What were you in?" He says, "Paras, Gov." And I says, "Don't call me Gov, all right? And don't call me Screw, because I know where that definition came from. It was an old torture device where they had to stand on the screw device and keep turning it." I says, I know all that. Don't call me that." I says, "Relax. Why are you here?" He says, "The thing, I've got drugs on me." And I says, "Right, okay. So why did you fight with the two prison officers? Why did you have a scrap with them?" "Well, they accused me of drugs." And I says, "Right, I'm an ex-para, mate, but I moved to the Royal Dragoon Guards." So I told him straight again and said, "Well, why are you in prison now? You not asked my question originally. Why are you in prison?" He says, "I'm bored. I'm bored of life. Every job I go into, I don't feel fulfilled. So I just go out and make stupid choices." I said, "So what did you do?" He says, "I went and got pissed and drove my car and crashed it." It's like, bloody hell, mate. There's other ways to, like, excite your life than doing that and putting other people at risk, especially with you being an ex-parapal. You're meant to be up here in the infantry. And I know we hear it all the time, crap hats, but there's a difference. Paras are up here, mate. I says, you need to do it the right way. And then after speaking to him, another squaddy came in. Bloody hell, this is not normal. Two squaddies in the same week being brought to prison. And then another one. It's like, bloody hell, another one. And I got moved on to block 4, because obviously they were named after 1, 2, 3, 4, and you had every area segregated. House block 5, house block 4, and that. House block 4, we had 17 squaddies, ex-squaddies on a wing, and that was not normal. And then when I moved to Hull prison to work there, it was ridiculous the amount of ex-squaddies I was coming across. Ridiculous. And even now in my job, thankfully, I've not arrested a squaddie or had to deal with one in the wrong way. But I have come across a lot who's been very suicidal, and I've had to talk them out of doing something silly. And you can see it in their eyes. And you know as well as I do, when you look in somebody's eyes, they have that stare, especially after war. They have that just, when someone's genuine, when they've been to and seen something. Like when we lost Ash Smith, who stepped on a £240 IED in Royal Dragoon Guards. He was in my Barmer team. I wasn't the Barmer commander at the time, but he stepped and just disappeared. And you could see it on everyone's faces. You just had that stare of just war, and just I don't know. You don't even remember doing it at all. You just remember being sat there, just looking into the world, or looking into the Hesco bag for hours on end. I remember just being sat in the fuel department, on a couple of jerry cans, just staring into the world. It was only until somebody said to me, "Inchy, you've been sat here for nearly 4 hours." I was like, "Oh, have I?" Oh. You just get lost in the world, don't you? And you know when someone's
Yeah,
genuine.
yeah.
But looking at some of these people in police, you could just see they were going to go through with it, and you can see they're really lost in the world, and it's so sad to see. It really is, and it's heartbreaking as well because you have
I
all
mean,
these lads, and I know we hear it on the news all the time, and we hear people saying all the time on the veterans page and everything. We need to do more for squaddies. We really do because they have, and I know now we've got people joining, but Ireland, serving in Northern Ireland, Falklands, Iraq, Afghanistan, all your wars, all your conflicts. You need to protect them generations because they have got so much to teach. They have got so much to bring to this world, and they're not getting to bring it to this world because they're not even given a chance. And then you have so many lads who just basically go into army mode, who just go into war in like conflict mode, just turn off
yeah.
to the world and just go through the motions. And then it gets to the point they come back to reality and go, "I'm not fulfilled," and then they end their lives, and it's so sad.
I
So
listened
that's
to
why
a
I'm saying
one.
that.
Yeah, no, I listened to a one the other night. I think it was on fucking TikTok or something like that. There was like a clip of this guy talking, and then I think he'd been to, he was obviously a veteran. He'd been to Nick, and they asked him. The guy was interviewing him. He basically said, why? What happened to you after you got out? And he just said, conflict. He goes, I was too army barmy. I was too much. I was military when I left the army, and I couldn't settle in any job. And the only thing that gave me any, not, I wouldn't say a buzz. Like they didn't explain it like that, but the only thing that would kind of fulfill him was conflict, whether that be going up to the bosses at work and having an argument with them, and then going back and being able to tell his mate, that swinging the lamp, a little bit of banter talk and stuff like that. He had nothing to fill him anymore, and he ended up just getting into more and more trouble through conflict, causing conflict. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until after he'd been to jail and back out, he'd had a bit of therapy in jail, that he realised what he was doing and he could get out of it. And it is fucking hard. There's all these people out there. There's all these agencies to help people, but the agencies haven't got the backup of the NHS. Because I mean, like Op Courage and stuff like that. I'm not dissing the NHS. Don't get me wrong, but they're strapped as well. So you'll have like one of the associations where there's 3 or 4 people that were trying to help 30, 40 people. They can't. They can only help so many people at a time. And now they've got the new thing with the Up Courage, like you can go to your doctors and say, I was a veteran, blah, 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 try and get you pushed through quicker and all that. But still, it doesn't seem to be working as much. And I've lost friends since I left the army through suicide, through not getting help in time and stuff like that. But, what we've got to do is like keep our fingers crossed and work a bit harder for the other people that are out there, people like Walking for Wounded and the veterans associations that are all knocking about and combat stress and stuff like that. I interviewed a guy a couple of weeks back who was an ex-Pioneer Corps, and he was in the. They've already been out by the time this one comes out, but he got picked for the picking up the dead bodies and that in the first Gulf War and stuff like that, and it was horrendous. And I mean, you'll have seen it in your current line of work where you've got to go and recover, bodies and stuff like that. My brother was the same. My
Yeah.
brother worked on the trains in Hull, and that was part of his job, where people commit suicide with the trains and stuff like that. And it affects everyone mentally. But he was totally
Mm.
screwed and never got the help off the army. And I think that, back then, I don't know what the army's like now with, people who are suffering stress, mental stress or combat stress or whatever, serving, whether it's identified and made
No,
better for them, I'm not sure.
they've got
But
well-being
it's
rooms and
just,
everything now. So
I mean, I'm
yeah,
laughing when
there's
you
no
say
beast
that.
teams anymore.
This
Oh yeah, well,
that's
it's
not
like the
going to
lad
go
we took
well.
back who. It was like a lad we took back who was absolutely pissed off. We took him back to the camp and he shit himself in the back of the vehicle. And the MPGS, when we dropped him off, said, "Do you want him to clean it?" I was like, "I'll tell you what, no, because he's going to get beasted in the morning anyway." And he went, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not allowed to say that word." no, you can't say that. It upsets too many people. It causes anxiety. I couldn't believe that was coming out of his mouth. And he went, it causes anxiety. I said, he's gone out and made a tool of himself. And you're not going to, take him down to the gym and just put him on the treadmill and frag him a bit or make him work guard duty. No, we're not allowed to do that anymore. We're not allowed to make him do guard duty. It upsets people and it makes people leave the army. We've got to be careful. I was like, wow,
Fucking hell.
what? I was on fire duty every time I fucked up and had my weekends taken off me. Or before I became a PTI, I was sent down to the gym and absolutely fragged if I ever did or just
Fucking
taken in
hell.
the office and beaten black and blue.
Yeah. Yeah. 396 days unreckonable service I had in the first 5 years of the army. So yeah, I wasn't a very good boy, and I got beat up
Yeah.
like fuck. I mean, Jesus.
Oh no, this is it. I remember the first time I took a punch and realised I wasn't made of glass was we had just got back from the ranges. Our boots were covered in shit and in mud and everything. Our rifles wasn't clean, and I remember my section commander was in the NCO's office with Corporal Griffiths, Corporal McGrean, Sergeant Watts, uh, Corporal. I'm trying to remember his name. He was a scary little bald guy. That's all I can remember. He was scary. They were all scary, to be fair. And every time they shouted us, we had to run to the office going, give me a job, give me a job, give me a job, give me a job. And you'd have to do pull-ups to, obviously, the battle honours. So if Bob ran down the corridor, Iraq 4, Clemens, Benoon, Reveal, everything, you had to recite them. And all I remember is, Inchy. So I ran to the office as quick as I could, the speed of 1,000 gazelles. And before I had a chance to react, I took a step in the office, and all I remember, I didn't feel the pain of it. I just remember a bit of contact cheek from a fist. And then I woke up in my bed with Flynn, this little Scottish lad in my section, looking at me, frantically bullying his boots. And I woke up, I couldn't speak. There was dribble coming out my jaw, and I just went, what happened? And Flynn went, he knocked you the fuck out, mate. And then Corporal McGreen would just stood there at the door with a cig, took a massive drag of it, and just went, "You won't fuck up again, will you, Joe?" And then walked out the room. And I just went, "What?" I just looked at my locker and saw my locker was left open, and I was like, "Oh yeah." And, yeah,
I
two
mean, we
padlocks
laugh
are on that
about
locker ever
that.
since.
Yeah, we laugh about that, and I was quite lucky that when I was in training, none of my sergeants had a thunders. But it goes the other way. I mean, do you think it's right that you should do that, or it should be allowed to happen, or just to a certain extent? And where is it you draw that line,
No,
really?
I can see why they shouldn't do it, but at the same time, I can see why they do it because I don't know what other regiments were like, but I know the Paras when I was in were very traditional. They had us go into the scoff house, obviously doing our jump drills, so going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and running up, and then saying, "Right, Joe, you've got to eat your food before we've eaten ours." And obviously, they can go to the front of the queue.
Right.
And before we could go anywhere, we had to recite the battle honours. We had to watch Bridge Too Far all the time. So I know why they did it. We were preparing for conflict, and
Yeah,
the Paras have a reputation to keep, like every regiment. They're the battle honours, so I can see why they beat it into us because they wanted the people who were to finish the course and go to the regiment to be the best, and they really did. And it's the army, be the best.
yeah.
It was the motto, it was the saying. But now I can see why you shouldn't do it, but at the same time, I see why they did it. And yeah, it's I can't answer that question.
I know.
I
That's why
can't.
I asked it.
It's a difficult one.
It is. It's a hard one. That I mean,
Because
I can't give you an answer for that either. Really,
if I
I believe
look,
you. I believe there should be discipline and harsh discipline as well, but not
yeah,
to the
yeah,
point of bullying.
yeah, it definitely was never bullying because it wasn't just me, and it's as well as I do. You had the blanket punishment. So if one
Yeah,
person messed up, they beasted everyone else. Um, you know, So it was never bullying, and I wasn't the only person who got knocked out in my platoon. I can tell you that now. But it did definitely make you tougher, and it did make you prepare for the worst, and it did make you realise you wasn't made of glass, and the worst somebody could do is knock you out.
Yeah.
Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Again, which is why I don't really care if somebody gets in my face anymore. I know a lot of people say it, but I've taken punches. I remember Scott Morton. It was XP company, PTI. He became my core bloke when I became a PTI in the RDG, because obviously core blokes move about every couple of years. So he came to us and he recognised me. And I remember I didn't clean the gym in time, and he walked up to me and he says, "You know what's coming, don't you, Steve?" And I looked at him and I just nodded as he nodded. He went, "Which side?" And I just went, "Oh, left." And he just, so precise, without taking his eyes off my eyes, perfectly struck me in the kidney, right? And I dropped to my knees. And he went, "You won't do it again, will you?" And I went, "No, Staff, never," and just dropped down. So he knew I'd been from that background. I don't think he could have got away with that with the new lads who were joining. But he knew, we had that discipline, and we won't go out and just do it to anyone. We won't bully anyone either. But I think he wanted to keep that tradition alive, and he knew with me being an ex-para, he knew he could as well, because he was proud, and, you see that. So, yeah, I can see there should definitely be discipline, but they need to be careful how they do it. That's all.
Yeah.
Especially this day and age now.
If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to Op Herrick for a bit. You mentioned a team, a Barrowman team, was it?
Oh, sorry, I'm just getting the charger. Sorry, I'm just getting the charger because
all right.
Phone's going to die. How is it in the kitchen? Sorry. So I just don't want the conversation to die because the phone's about to die. Yeah, sorry. Say again. Op Herrick. So
the Op Herrick
12 with the.
Yeah, you mentioned what was the teams that you mentioned you were on, the IED teams.
So
the Barrowman team.
I was in the Barma team. So I was in D Squadron. I got moved from A Squadron to D Squadron for Op Herrick 12, which was your Reaper Squadron in the Vikings, Viking 1s, Viking Mark 2s, which was by the Royal Marines. So we had to go back down to Bovington and get some training on them by the Marines, amphibious vehicle to use, because Challengers was not reliable out in Afghan at all in them terrains. So my role was sometimes commander, Viking commander. If there was two NCOs, I was either the operator or the driver, because you just had the GPMG on top. You didn't have anything else. Or Barma commander. Mainly, I was in the Barma team, or as Barma commander, as the NCO. So most of my tour was looking for IEDs. So obviously when we were harbouring up, obviously patrolling any new areas, that we'd get out, obviously staggered formation, look for any IEDs or anything. In the old-fashioned way, if we found out, was get the bayonet out, poke it and hope it didn't go up, and then try and see what it was and get the engineers out if you did identify something. So that was mainly my duty out in Afghan.
So high stress then for that?
Yeah, luckily I ain't gone grey, but it was very high stress because as funny as it was, obviously we all know we deal with stressful situations with humour, and unfortunately before Ash stepped on his IED, we had just cleared an area. I was at the front of the staggered formation. We obviously took it in turns. So I was never just at the back. We always took our turns. So there was me, Dolby, Ash Smith, Stylesy, Swifty, McAllister, who was in the Barma team. And the day before Ash died, Ash Smith, unfortunately, the Royal Dragoon Guards, I thought I found something. And, I just looked at him. I remember looking over my shoulder because I was laid in the prone position, because that's what you had to do, get low to the ground, get your bayonet out and start poking like at an angle to try and get underneath it. And as we're aware, there were clever bastards. They used to stick the pressure pad either underneath the IED in which was a big container, quite deep down. So when you stepped on it, or if you got the metal detector, you wouldn't scan it or
Right.
anything. And I thought I found something, so I just looked back at Ash and went, right, if I die, tell my family hello, and laughed, and he laughed at me. Turned out it was nothing. It was just a metal lid. The next day, unfortunately, when we went back to the harbour in one of the PBs, they came out, the villagers, and planted 16 IEDs in the tree line that we couldn't see, not even with the blimp in the air. So when we went down the same route, what we thought was safe, we still did the same procedures. Ash Smith happened to be at the front this day, and then it was Dolby, and it was Stylesy, and Stylesy was the NCO commander that day. I was sat in the back of a Viking, so I was actually the other commander of the other team, but we wasn't being used at that time. And then obviously we heard the explosion go off, a 240-pound bomb, which was designed to blow the tracks off a tank, so there was just a torso left of Ash, unfortunately, and Andy Clybury had to quickly get out, balm her up. Engineers came out in their big padded suit, and he found 16 IEDs had been planted. So yeah, it was a very stressful job. It was a very stressful job because you want. I know tanks were always protective, but for 6 months, constantly scanning for IEDs on foot, so it was very
Yeah.
stressful. And we had the only protective gear we had was our Mark 6 helmet and our Osprey, and then obviously we were still in Compat 95 Deserts versions before the multicam came out, the MTP. So we were still in the original kit as well, and we were still in the tester trial, like the Osprey and everything.
So with
But
that
it was
much
it was
stress,
very stressful.
yeah, with that much stress going on a tour like that, how did people react when they got back to the UK? I mean, did you go through Cyprus to decompress and stuff like that? Did people suffer?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we went to Cyprus. I don't remember much of it because we just got absolutely pissed for 2 days. I remember lads drinking off the top of bins, any spilled alcohol. Husey and everyone. I remember a lot of naked men stood above my bed, which sounds very
No,
sexual.
no.
But
It does, but it's
just
normal.
saying, does my penis? Yeah, no, this is it. And Hughes, I remember Hughesy stood there with a big carabiner on the end of his penis, saying, "Does my penis offend you, Inchy?" And I says, "Mate, you're not that big. Don't worry." Um, but I don't really remember much of it because we got pissed up, really drunk. All I remember is the flight back from Cyprus, and even then, that was a bit of a blur. I, I can't really say how the other lads went through it. I got busy straight away because I went straight back to working in the gym from it. And obviously, then I was told when we had our hearing test shortly after I was deaf in one ear. So that kind of kept me busy in a way because I couldn't go on the tank park anymore. I couldn't go to the ranges anymore. I wasn't allowed near anything, with a certain decibel, which was not the army's doctor's orders. It was the civilian doctor's orders that says you can't let him near it because I had to go to a specialist hearing doctor in Darlington at the time. Not Darlington. Where was it? It was near Harrogate actually. And they said you can't. So I got this sick chit that said can't go on ranges anymore. So I kept myself busy in the gym as a PTI, and I was more thinking about my hearing loss. How's that going to affect my life? So I couldn't really speak to the other. I couldn't really speak for the other lads because, as you're aware, gym staff were in the gym as well, and then because I couldn't go on any training, I didn't see much of the lads anymore. They were out on the tanks. They were out doing training again, getting ready for the next Op Herrick tour. So I didn't see him. So I can't really comment what they were going through. To be fair, because I
Yeah.
was then getting ready to get out of the army as well.
All right, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I don't. I've spoken to some of the guys, and we've spoke about the decompression in Cyprus, whether it helped people or not. And a few of them have just said exactly the same thing what you said. They don't remember it because they got there, they got pissed, there was a massive fight because there was 2 units there, and it was all part of it. They're all shaking hands the next morning. There was no
No,
animosity
yeah,
like that. But I've spoken to others and they said it should have been longer, where it wasn't just go get stuck into them
yeah,
two camps and get pissed to get it all out of your system. It was to actually decompress, sit, talk about stress management, talk about this, talk about the other, talk about how you, well, I suppose how you're feeling or whatever, what you can expect to feel when you get back to the UK, the difference in tempo and stuff like that, and that would have probably helped more people to reintegrate back into it. I mean, I've come off tours before where there was no decompression, there was nothing like that. You just back to work. You get a couple of days off,
yeah,
back to work, wait for your leave to turn up when everyone had recovered back to the unit, and then you went off on your 4 weeks leave or whatever. But there was nothing. You didn't. 1 minute I'm walking around the streets in Ireland, the next minute I'm at home walking around the streets of when my
yeah,
parents lived then at Grantham, and I'm like, oh, this is. And I was still walking down the street looking up at people's windows and stuff like that. There was. I know it sounds a bit wary and a bit alley, but that's how it was. There was no break. It was like straight off and in. And I suppose that some people suffer. A lot of people will probably suffer from that. But I suppose
I
it is what it is,
agree.
isn't it?
No, this is it. This is why I can't comment on what the other lads went through because
Yeah,
it's kind of like I don't know what the best way to describe it is. It's kind of surreal. You've just gone to Afghan and everything. I do agree. Cyprus should have been a week at least, not just a couple of days, like a day and a night and a day, and half that
yeah,
day's traveling back to the UK anyway. Um, it definitely should have been longer. It should have been a week because again, everyone goes through it differently, don't they? So even if somebody looks normal on the outside, I've seen a couple of lads from the regiment, and you can tell it has affected them, even when they don't say. For example, I know a couple of lads who have gone horrifically grey, like who are younger than me, and they've just gone completely grey from the conflict, and you can see it, and you can also see, like I was saying earlier, that face the pull of just war, just that look.
yeah.
I don't know the best way to describe it. You know what I'm saying, and you
Yeah.
know what
The thousand
when they
yard
genuinely
staring
have
off,
seen
I say, yeah.
conflict. Yeah, that is it. But it's not the 1,000 yard stare of somebody about to get in a fight. It's 1,000 yard stare of there's nobody behind the wheel. They're
Yeah,
talking to you and they're not there, and you can see it in their physical presence. That, like I said, they've either lost their hair, they've gone grey. Just the look in the face, the mannerisms, everything. You can just see it. And it is sad to see, but that's why I said I don't want to make assumptions of what people went through because obviously, like I said, with my hearing loss, I didn't get back to go. I didn't get to hang around the lads anymore. The only time I got to see them was that couple of hours a day, taking them for PT. We still had the laugh, we still had the banter. People take the piss out of me. How do you drown a PTI? You throw a mirror at the bottom of the pool, all that.
yeah.
How tight's your vest? Is it spray-on size? We all had that laugh. But yeah, you could definitely see it. You could definitely see it in people and how it's affected them. And I mean, I have my moments. There's been times. I don't know if you've done it. There's been times where it just hits me one day, and I've sat down and just cried my eyes out for 15 minutes solid, and then I'm fine. I'm just
Yeah.
fine. It's
No,
weird.
yeah.
Last year, it happened to me just randomly. I just sat down and I couldn't stop crying, and I mean, I couldn't even breathe properly. I was in that much crying, thinking about it all. Because we lost Sergeant Bob Monkhouse, we lost James Leverett, who was an outstanding soldier. He would have served his whole service. You could never badmouth the army in front of him. We lost Matt Stenton as well. He was another one. He would have been an RSM. He absolutely loved the job. He was amazing at the job. And Ash Smith, and it just hit you. Just remembered all the times, all your firefights, everything you went through. You could remember smells, like just walking about. For some reason, I was walking once and I just smelt something, and for some reason, I just pictured myself going down a road, the A1 in Afghan, and I could just visualize the road, following the tracks in front of me, the Viking in front of me, making sure my tracks were in his tracks. And I could see it all. I could even see my Kevlar gloves, my DPM gloves on, my Viking steering wheel. I could see it all. I could see the bowman behind me, the equipment behind my seat, just from a smell. And I just sat down and started crying, just bawling my eyes out for 15 minutes. But once it was done, I was fine. I was just back to normal.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure others have been through that, and I think that's how my body just copes with it, or how I just mentally deal with it.
I think a lot of people do exactly the same thing. I've sat and interviewed people in my house who did exactly the same thing during the podcast, and I didn't know how to react. I didn't know. I just started to sit back and wait for them. And it was, again, other people I spoke to remotely and stuff like that. We're talking away, and it was mad. For example, it'll have come out by the time this one comes out. One of my old mates came up here to do the podcast with us, and we did it in 2 parts. So we did the first hour just about like his military career, and then we had a break, we had a brew in that, and then we did the second part, and it was the second part that was stuff that he'd done afterwards, like all the contracting he'd done and things like that out in Afghan, Sudan, places like that. And we were talking, and he was about when he got diagnosed with PTSD and not combat stress, but it's another form of it. It's like hypervigilance, but all comes under the same umbrella. And he sat talking, and he mentioned these things, and he was looking at me when he was saying it, and he stopped, and he just went, "You're all right?" And I was like, because as he was saying that, I was sat in my own head going, tick, tick, tick. I recognise that, recognise that, recognise that. And I can't go back and say, "Oh, I went through this in the army, I went through that in the army," because I had all the tours I was on. For the last 2, I was like in the ops room, so I wasn't out on the ground and stuff like that. But he was sat there and looked. He goes, "I can just see it in your face. You're suffering from it." And we got to stop. We got to stop the podcast, have a bit of a pause and a rewind, and then start again. And there's a few of them have been like that, but they've all said that it's been good to sit and talk about it and get their feelings out and stuff like that, and mention things that have happened. I would imagine with the life that you've had, it's good to, like you mentioned earlier about being on the radio talking about it. I would imagine it helps for you to talk about it and educate other people that fucking life's not roses for everybody. If you know what I mean, like that.
Oh yeah. That's one of my mental coping mechanisms. Not just, I know when people say, and I agree with it, fitness helps mental health. It does me. I get agitated if I don't go to the gym. I get stressed if I don't go to the gym, because it helps me release my stress and it helps me cope with everything. But at the same time, like I said, I went on Sheffield Radio for it. I've been to colleges to give speaks to kids. But the way I look at it, I've had a very rough upbringing. And obviously even after the army, which wasn't the army's fault, I just had very manipulative, horrible family members who have not earned the title as parents. But I tell myself there is somebody, and there is, going through far worse than I am, or has been through far worse. So yes, I've been through a horrible patch, but I need to remind myself that there is somebody out there right now, or is just about to go through it, or who has been through it and has been through far worse. And it does help talking about it. And I felt a lot better the first time I ever spoke about it. I couldn't even get the words out. The first time I ever spoke about it, about my life, I had to keep stopping, and I kept crying. And then I felt, it sounds, weird.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound weird at all.
No, I mean, it sounds weird because I kept saying, "You're a man, grow up." But I shouldn't say that to myself. I shouldn't say, "You're a man, grow up." This is what men go through. It's normal. And we need to do it more often. We do. Men need to do it more often. And I know we have that sense of pride, especially those who have served the country. But we do. And I've told countless friends, just talk to me about it. Trust me, from somebody who's lived here, who's been on tours. And again, I know while we were out in Afghan, and every time we went back to Camp Bastion to fix one of our Vikings or replace a Viking after it had been lost to an IED or damaged beyond repair, every time we were in Bastion, they had Op blackout. Obviously, nobody could make contact with home because we were always on the front line, and they had Op blackout, meaning somebody had passed away and they needed to notify the family before rumours spread, before people rang home or went on the internet who were staying at Camp Bastion saying, "Oh, somebody's just died, they've been shot." And it was the Marines, the Royal Marines every time, or an infantry regiment. Every week there was somebody being flown in, and this is what I used to say to some of the lads in RDGs and into regiment, and some of the lads I was with used to say the same to others. We can't complain. Yes, it's awful we've lost 4 lads, but the Marines are getting spanked every day down south in Afghan. The Fijians were doing their ritual in Bastion every other week for one of their fallen brothers or sisters. And that's what I tell myself every time. We got it bad, but there were regiments who got it far worse, who saw far worse than we did. We were in conflicts, we were in firefights for hours on end, but there were infantry regiments who were watching their brothers fall right next to them from a bullet, from a gunshot wound, and still continuing that firefight. We had that, but nowhere near to the extent other regiments had. And which is why I go back to again earlier, don't lie about what you've done in your regiment, which regiment you served in. Just be truthful and be proud you've served that regiment. We all had a purpose. We all had a role to play. And yes, we have a joke. RLC, really large corps, paras, pink berets, crap hats to paras. But I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it on Remembrance Day. I've had people lie, and it always makes me laugh when somebody lies about the paras. Yeah, I wasn't full-time para, but I can definitely pick up on when somebody's lying about training, phase 2, P company, and going to the regiment, because I did that. I didn't get to serve with the regiment full-time, but I know when somebody's lying when they say, I was in the paras, I served, It's like, all right, how many assessments were there in P company? Well, you did your 10 miler, you did your 2 miler. All right, what about milling, Trinasium? What about the steeplechase? Oh, yeah, well, there was all that. All right, then. So what are the battle honours? What are they? Well, you should know, because the platoons were named after the battle honours. What platoon were you in phase 1 and phase 2? Oh, well, don't ask me that. I don't know. All right. When did you get your maroon beret? Well, I got it day 1. You don't get it day 1, mate. You get it week 6. And you get a big fuck-off green backing to say you're still a nig, new in green. And that you haven't done P company yet. So I'm sure you've seen it. There's no point lying about what you served in. Just be proud. You served. Just be proud. Even if you didn't do a tour. I know lads who served in the Royal Dragoon Guards who didn't do a tour, who didn't come with us to Iraq and Afghan, but it was for genuine reasons. They wasn't able to. There was one lad in particular, and he was heartbroken. His body couldn't climatise, so it was nothing to do with him. They sent him to Iraq, and the doctors found out his body couldn't climatise at all, and they sent him home, and he couldn't go to Afghan, and he felt useless, bless him. He felt useless staying back at Catterick, and he wanted to do his part for genuine reasons. So there are people like that. You probably heard, we had one lad, he's in prison now for life, Woodall, Corporal Woodall in the Royal Dragoon Guards. He stabbed his wife to death in Sheffield, who was a nurse.
Yeah.
It was all over the news. He introduced me to the Royal Dragoon Guards. He was a provost staff. He was a diabetic, and unfortunately, he went down the wrong path. He wasn't allowed to serve on tour because of his diabetes. He wasn't allowed to do much at all. It did get in the way of him getting promoted. So the army tried to help him. They made him a provost staff. They gave him his NCO. Still, they gave him a purpose. But when he left the army, I know he became an OSG in the prison service, so an operational support guard. He wasn't allowed to be a prison officer because of his diabetes. And from what I've gathered, it messed with his head because he wasn't hard to serve it. I know he was telling people, I'm not a real soldier because I never got to serve on tour. You were a soldier. But unfortunately, his wife, who was doing very well and successful, he ended up killing her and then handing himself in shortly after because it just built up to the point where, and I didn't see that coming because he was in the regiment as long as I was in the Royal Dragoon Guards. That's all. And it clearly got to the point where he thought, I'm a nobody. I look at my wife. And then he just lost his head. I don't want to see any squaddy go through that, anyone to go through that. I want people to know, be proud of what you've done. I accept the facts about the paras. I don't go around telling everyone I did my 7 to 8 years as a para. I tell people the truth.
Yeah.
I didn't make it. I got to the end of P Company, got to keep my maroon beret, but unfortunately, you weren't allowed to wear it in the tank regiment because there was no need for it. They never sent anyone on a P Company course because tank regiments didn't have it. Why would you need your wings? Why would you need your dagger? You're in a tank. So it was never heard of, especially in a main battle tank regiment, to wear a maroon beret. And the first day I turned up to Bovington, there were rumours going around about me that I bit my sergeant's ear off because I was walking around with my maroon belt and my beret on. So that was hilarious. I remember walking around and people avoided me. Even the NCOs avoided me. They actually steered clear of me. So as I was marching around, and I was in my para jacket with my smock, my schmag smorrit, maroon beret, maroon belt, I think I can't remember the name. I'm trying to remember it. It was like a shemag, but it was more like a netting that you put on your helmet as well.
Style.
In para, that's the one.
Yeah.
Wearing that, my para smock, my maroon beret, walking around Bovington, and then I remember coming to parade, and I was stood to attention on the front line, and because I was one of the shortest lads, I was obviously towards the centre, so I was stood right close to the sergeant, and the sergeant took a big step back away from me. And I just looked at him. He looked at me, made quick eye contact, and looked away. And I thought, why is everyone being so weird with me? And then when I was sat in my room, somebody came up to me and went, is it fucking true? And I says, what? And he went, you got kicked out of your regiment because your sergeant told you to go for a run, so you bit his ear off. And I went, no, who the fuck said that? Surely, if that was true, I should have been in Colchester. I was like, I don't know where that came from, but I debunked them rumours straight away and says, no, I'm here because I got medically, downgraded and I had to either transfer or get out. Oh, thank fuck. That's why nobody wanted to share a room with you because they thought you were going to stab him in the middle of the night and all this.
Fucking hell. That's what I meant to say. A room to start that one. Jesus.
Are crazy. Yeah, I was like, paras are crazy, but we're not that crazy. Jesus. Oh, yeah.
Stephen, we've been on now for an hour and 40. I think that's about time for us to call it quits on this one. It's been a very, very interesting story from you. I just hope the future is a lot brighter than your past has been. And it sounds as though you've got there.
We have, yeah. Like I said, I'm paying off that last bit of debt. That's sorted now. Luckily, I've transferred that to the final bit to a 0% interest. I'm paying that off, and then we're debt clear. But I can't complain because, like I said to you, I'm in a lovely house now, supported by my wife's family, who are very supportive of me. They've got me into the police. Well, they've helped me get into police by supporting me. Because when you join the police, the wage is crap. They don't pay you. They pay you a student's wage for the first 2 years. I've got my beautiful son, and my days off are all with him. So while my wife's at work, and it's the best life. It is the best life. It's the most rewarding, and I've got my wife supporting me every day as well.
I think that boy you've got is spoiled.
Yeah, he gets told off, don't worry. I don't want him to be his life to deal with. But no, it's been a real pleasure, and I hope what I've said helps someone. I really do. And I'm sure, people appreciate what you're doing. It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Especially to help people get it off the chest.
Yeah. I mean, I'm enjoying doing it, to be honest. It's been like I said, like what I said to you before we started, I do this not just so people can listen to other people's stories, but I do it for something for me to do. Otherwise, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole anymore. I want to stick to where a level where I'm at now, where I'm quite happy. But it's been honestly, it's been great talking to you. It really has. I want to stop the recording now. Thanks for getting this far, if you did. I hope you enjoyed that one. It was a bit of a story, wasn't it? Bloody hell, I don't understand how people can treat their own kids the way Stephen's father treated him. His mother treated him as well. Anyway, moving on to next week, I'll be talking to a guy called Mark Baker. Quite an interesting story. Mark served with 3-4 battery for a while and had a bit of a run-in with the CDT team. But I'll let him tell his story next week. It's one to look forward to. Just keep listening. Share it on every place that you listen to. Share it around. Just get the word out there for the podcast. I'm enjoying doing them and I'm loving that people are listening to them. Thanks again and bye-bye now.